Fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Welcome to the Happy Hour Garage, featuring a duo of racing gals who live for the thunder of horsepower, the smell of high-octane fuel, and burning rubber at 200 miles an hour. They believe a day at the Speedway is like a day at the spa. Together, they bring you NASCAR news and interviews and get you ready for the races each week. And now, here's your hosts, Shannon Yoakum and Maureen Kelly from the Happy Hour Garage.
Gentlemen, start your engine.
Hey, I'm back. Yes, here I am in my British Columbia studio, sipping on my new beer of choice, supporting my maybe new driver. It's a Busch Light. I kind of like it. I'm your host, Shannon Yoakum. I'm talking to you from beautiful British Columbia, where after a very long plane ride yesterday and about 2 hours sleep, here I am. But I'm happy to be home. My kitties miss me. My house looked like a tumbleweed alley with lots of fur balls, but I don't care. And laundry's still going. I missed you guys like mad. And first of all, let me say, I really want to thank both of you for all the work you did while I was away on holidays, because I was playing a lot more than working, which, you know, that's what holidays are for. And you both did a really good job, especially on the Morgan Shepherd, hitting over 1,000 listeners. That's awesome, and promoting everything and doing everything, thanks to both of you. So tonight I have both Maureen and Buddy with me, so let me greet them one at a time here. Maureen is my co-host, and she lives in Pennsylvania. Good day.
Oh, it's a great day here. It's been a gorgeous weather, a little bit of rain yesterday, but we can handle it. I just don't need any more snow. But we had a great time while you were away. We did that too. But I thoroughly enjoyed all your pictures, and that was a lot of fun. And people kept saying to me, "Did you get any more pictures from Shannon?" And I'd be over there looking to see, because you had remarkable pictures, and anybody who didn't see them needs to go back and look at all the pictures you took in the garages and all. It was wonderful.
I downloaded them this morning onto my main computer, and there was still almost 2,000 of them. I took myself, probably a third of them. But my husband, I said to him, "Here's a camera, go nuts, just shoot. They're pictures. I can delete them if I don't like them." And he had a bit of trouble with the camera at times, but almost 2,000 pictures. Now I got to sort them into files. That should be fun. But I had a lot of comments on pictures. People seem to be living my holiday with me, through me, and that's great. I love that. And
absolutely. And of course the beach was gorgeous. That was a beautiful area you had to stay in.
I'm not much of a beach person. I grew up on a lake. Like, I've lived my whole life on lakes, and I still live near a lake. But I've never been much of a beach person, but man, do they ever look after that beach down there. It was crystal clean. They have garbage cans, both recycling and garbage, every 100 feet. People can drive up and down on the beach, but only at 10 miles an hour. It costs you $10, and I think it was $10, and you could go quite a long ways. And then there's parts of the beach where people can't drive, but it's nice to walk on. And there's no cigarette butts, no shells or rocks. It's just nice packed sand. It was beautiful. The sunrises were to die for. And when that full moon came out the other night, it was shining on the water. It was almost biblical. It was so beautiful. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. You made me all kind of jealous with all those pictures of the beautiful beach and hobnobbing with Hall of Famers like Leonard Wood.
Oh my God, that picture!
Having a blast, weren't you?
I was so delighted with him. Every time I open my iPad, I see that picture with him. It's my background, and it just makes me smile. I mean, that Leonard had me in a death lock. I mean, I wasn't budging, but I wasn't complaining either.
Yeah, we could tell.
And then he goes over and shakes my husband's hand for taking the picture. I just thought that was a class act right there, and what a thrill that was. And I got a lot of comments about that picture, and I was so lucky to be able to do that. And later on that day, he was walking around the fan zone in his Wood Brothers shirt, and he was, I think, with his grandchildren or great grandchildren, and they were just having some. What's the name of your chicken there? The Bojangles.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love Bojangles.
Yeah, I'd never had it before. We tried it because, well, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Because we have to try food when we're someplace.
We must eat sometime. I said to Q on the way home last night, I said, we're probably the only people that go on holidays and lose weight. Because I think, I wish I would have had one of those Fitbit things that could tell me how far we walked. I mean, we walked and walked and walked and walked and walked. I mean, that's a huge track. It's 2.5 miles long. So you're walking all the time and long ways. And
right. The garage must have been like, in one afternoon I saw this picture-wise, you covered all of the Xfinity garages, and then you were definitely in a whole nother area. It looked, I guess that was the truck series.
Yeah,
the garages. So that's a whole nother area, right?
It was really bizarre how it was laid out. Like when you cross the track where you see the big Daytona sign and say you go straight, on the left was the Cup guys, on the right was the Xfinity guys, and then behind the Cup guys in sort of a big open area is the trucks. So when they had that truck race and guys were peeling off the track, with problems, I'm not even sure. It was like a 5-minute drive to get there. So, wow, it was bizarre how that was laid out. And it was a real pain sometimes going from Xfinity truck, depending whether the Cup garage was hot or not. If it was hot, I couldn't go in, but if it's cold, I could with my pass. And sometimes I'd get stopped and have to walk all the way around the campground, and that was brutal. That.
Oh no!
And it was so inconsistent. It was driving me crazy. It depends what guy was there or whether you smiled at him right or something. But holy cow, my feet were just killing me. And my running shoes, oh man, they walked themselves to the spray to smell them out. Oh God, they were nasty. But you got to have good shoes and you got to wear them. So poor Q, he's a good sport. He didn't complain once, and a couple times I took him out to Volusia and to New Smyrna, and if I was on my own, I would have gone to a race every single night. But I had to ease it up on him a little bit, give him a couple breaks.
Well, those nights when you were at Volusia, it was cold.
Yes, it was cold actually right up until the truck race. At night. Yeah. During the day is okay. But at night,
we're not talking sweatshirt cold.
Oh no,
we're talking coat cold.
We're talking 4 layers cold.
Yeah.
The wind comes right at you, and there's no place to hide.
Yeah, Q looked frozen in that picture from the Sprint Unlimited.
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
He was frozen. He was literally frozen. And we're Canucks. We're used to cold, and we had our big Daytona jackets on, which we wear here in the winter. So, it's not like we weren't prepared. He had even had his pajama bottoms on under his jeans. Oh, God, that was funny. But, it was cold. And, it was interesting about Daytona. I mean, this is my second trip there, so I didn't have that same anticipation, same excitement. I had some excitement, but I wasn't like a newbie, and with the Daytona Rising stuff and all that, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I mean, there's been lots of infomercials on Race Hub and Fox and all that, which I got to watch all that when I was down there. Thank you. Anyway, they, I wasn't sure what to expect. And I do want to talk a bit about it because it's hard to tweet it or really get the feel of it on Facebook. But one of the best things that they did there was the escalators, and I cannot tell you what a saver those are. There's, I think, 4 sets of them along the side of the track that faces International Boulevard, and they go all the way up to the 4th floor where we were. We were in the top levels, and they, when a race started or was over, everybody orderly filed on them, and then both sides would go either up or down, depending on what time of day it was. And those were a lifesaver because if you've ever been to a race lately, if you look at the average age of somebody at that track, it's not under 30. I'll tell you that.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, even from going to Pocono, it's really hard for some people. to make it up that far.
Well, it's a lot of walking. And if you go, like Daytona Day, I think we arrived at the track just after 7 in the morning. The place was packed already. So people have to wander around throughout the day, and you got to have stuff to do and places to sit. And on the outside concourse, outside of the track, there's benches everywhere and picnic tables, lots and lots of places for people to sit. That was also very impressive. I thought that was good. They also did a very nice job on their concourse. It's nice and wide. They had, at anywhere there was an escalator, they had displays of cars, Chevy, Ford, Toyota, at each of the escalators, and one at the Florida Hospital end was sponsors Turn 1. And at that, and it was funny, they had this fake grass all over the concourse and these really comfy chairs. So my only complaint about the concourse was there wasn't any seating for the most part, and the Toyota suites went right up the whole from floor 1 to floor 4, so you couldn't cross from about just south of the start-finish line to turn 4. You have to go down to level 1, then go across, then come back up. You couldn't cross back and forth, and I couldn't quite figure that out because the suites all had elevators, and they were guarded by people so that some slumlord couldn't just jump on there and go camp out.
Some thief that had tickets in that last top row.
Exactly.
And end up in the Toyota suite.
Yeah, so that was a bit weird, but parking was interesting. You can no longer park in any of the lots close to the track. They have designated a new parking lot called Lot 7, and it's about 2 kilometers, about a mile and a half away. And they have buses running back and forth, and they have washrooms there, and it's very orderly. Only complaint there was, and not a personal complaint for me, but from fans is on Saturday, I think it was, the fan zone opened up at 7, but no buses ran until 10. So all those people were sitting there waiting to go down the fan zone and had to sit there for 3 hours and twiddle their thumbs. Even the bus drivers seemed confused as to why the buses weren't running, even though they were all sitting there.
Oh, and the drivers were on. Oh, that's sad.
That was very strange. I think what I saw a lot of during that first week was the track wasn't quite ready yet, and they had some hiccups, and a few things were obviously not ready. I mean, I laughed when we got there on Saturday for the All-Star race, or the Bud Shootout, or whatever it's called. We we go park, we take the bus, we get over there, and we're starving. So we go up to the concourse, and it says, oh, yeah, we have more washrooms, twice as many washrooms and concession stands. So I get up there. I can't find either one. The washrooms are really spread apart, and the concession stands are only from the checkered line to the end of turn 1 is one concession stand. That's it. And
right, you told me you were starved at one point.
Oh man, and you go up there, and you buy your stuff, and you got to take it through to a cashier who's got her list of what's on there written on a paper towel and a calculator.
Oh my goodness!
And that hot dog looked like it had been sitting there for 3 weeks. Q's burger was stone cold. Hot dog, burger, a small box of that ready-made crappy popcorn, and 2 beer, $34.
Isn't that
and no
that's
funnel
just
cake.
crazy?
And no funnel cakes. So here I am thinking, about all this on the way home last night about what I'm going to say about Daytona. Because the whole time I was there, and I was there for every event, every race, you're getting constant infomercials, whether it's on the tram or the Sprint Vision or the guy talking over the PA system about these big improvements and how everybody loves them and blah, 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 blah. I challenge Joey Chitwood to be a fan. Put on a disguise and be a fan. Of course, it looks beautiful and it's great for the media when there's no fans there and you're not trying to eat or find a washroom or stand in a lineup. The men's washroom still had lineups. The washrooms are beautiful, like they're big and airy, and they now have paper towels in addition to dryers, which is a bonus because then you can get women all wash their hands. Guys, I think, are about half. But there was a big, long lineup, and the weather was so cold that people weren't drinking beer, so they were drinking hot chocolate and coffee. It just really wasn't beer weather. And I never did see a single drunk. I will say that. Because it was too cold. Even on Sunday of the Daytona day was hot. A lot of people weren't drinking beer. It was too expensive. It was almost $10 a beer. That's you can bring your own in, but
that's right, exactly. That's probably what a lot of people do.
Well, I saw guys and couples and kids and all that walking around. They've each got backpacks with sweaters and radios and all that crap. And electronics. Then they're hauling a couple coolers, one for food, one for drink. And you got to haul that sucker around from 7 o'clock in the morning till the time the race starts. So, wow. Yeah.
It is too much. That happens now, of course, at Pocono. You can't go back to your car.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's the annoying thing now, right? Because you used to be able to wheel in your little cooler and then wheel it back out.
Yeah.
Before the race started. Now, you can't do that at Daytona because it's
3 miles to the freaking car. And you got to wait for a bus. You got to take the bus. You got to go do that. You got to get back on the bus. That would all probably take 45 minutes.
And I think what you're saying, what you're describing is one of the main reasons why your average person doesn't go to a race anymore, because it's not affordable.
Well,
and
you got a good point there, and that is actually my point, is that it seemed to me that it's for the elite now. I mean, we quite often, if it's economically feasible, we get suites, and there's a reason for that. No hassles with parking, lots of good food, alcohol readily available if you want it, and water and pop, or what do you call soda, and stuff like that, and washrooms right there. Like, there's a whole lot to be said for that. And it seemed to me that on the night of the truck race, for instance, I'd say only 20% of the track was full. There was only one concession that I found open at all, and there was two other vendors. One was selling pretzels and one was selling kettle corn, and that was it. So you're complaining about attendance. Well, give these people food and give them something to do during that time, right? There wasn't anything to do.
Yeah, that's a major complaint. I mean, yeah, especially, can you imagine, like, you take a family of 4, and you have to truck around every time your kid has to go to the bathroom. I mean, this is what happens when you're there with a family. And then trying to buy 4 hot chocolates, like Buddy said, now it becomes outrageous.
That's a payday. That's your paycheck, 4 hot chocolates.
It is, yep.
The hot chocolates were, I think, $8.
Oh, that's incredible. How much is the little stupid bag of brown dirt they throw in to make it?
I rarely drink hot chocolate. I think we had 8 hot chocolates, because we were frozen, solid. It just seems like racing is turning into for the elite only. I mean, the race tickets cost more than my flight and Q's flight combined.
Seriously?
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. I don't think I'll ever go to Daytona again. I might go to the beach. I like that condo we stayed in, and I like the area, and that North Turn restaurant is absolutely a must go to for any kind of race fan. I mean, that place was awesome, and the Legends car shows that they had every single day of the week in between the Bud Shootout and the truck race, they had something going on, and that really engaged fans, and it was very busy at those. But that, I tell you, there was lots of empty vacancy signs everywhere, right? Even including Daytona Day.
So would you do this again and just not get tickets? Because let's be honest,
left.
You can tell people what you ended up doing.
Oh yeah, I left the Daytona 500 halfway through and went so I could not spend 2 hours getting a 15-minute drive home, and watch the rest of it in our condo with our food and our beverages in comfort.
And chatting with all your friends.
Yeah.
On Facebook and Twitter. I could do that. I think I would actually enjoy that at that condo that you were at, and then being able to go in and out of the track all the other days and enjoy all that, that would be a lot of fun.
It was.
See,
And
that's
then
another
screw it
problem,
for the
I think.
race.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to Atlanta because of the new racing package. I feel like after watching the Daytona 5, the commercial 500, I'm
Yeah.
going to say that, they need to tweak the plate rules because it was one of the most boring races I've ever sat and watched as far as the Daytona 500 until the last 2 laps.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was the most spectacular finish I've ever seen for a Daytona 500.
Yeah.
But it was the Gibbs train. You get Marine. You watched the whole thing on TV. Would you say we'd get 5 to 6 minutes worth of racing, then we'd have 3 to 4 minutes worth of commercials and on and on and on like that? It was ridiculous.
We timed it at one point, remember? We actually were. I mean, people in the group threads were actually timing this stuff.
Oh, it was terrible, and I haven't posted up the commercial thing yet because I just got back and I will go do that. But I bet you it's pretty high. And don't feel bad. We were also getting commercials. We were getting, oh, look how great we are commercials constantly.
Mm-hmm.
It was endless. And, I will say they did improve the seats nicely. They were nice seats, they're comfortable, and they all had cup holders. But we were sitting in the top section, and on my row were some hefty people. And when we got up to, go do whatever, I had to actually hang on to this guy and her as I was going by because my feet only had about 3 inches, and then it was a sheer drop down to the seats below me. It was a little scary. At one point, I wobbled, and no, I didn't even drink during the Daytona 500 or any of the other races for that matter. I was dead sober, and it scared the crap out of me. I almost had a heart attack. It was like, oh my God, it's very narrow. It's great that the person sitting in front of you is a lot lower than you, but you only got that couple inches, and no offense to Americans, but a lot of them at the track were quite hefty.
Jesus, do you know what? I wonder how many people actually fell.
I don't know. There was a couple people hurt. There was one guy hurt when I was watching the Chevy thing. I was waiting for you or Dale Jr. there, and some young kid fainted or something from the crowds. I saw that, and I saw the little ambulance buggy go up and down the concourse with its lights going a few times. So, who knows? Maybe it was beautiful seats, nice view, like you could see everything. But if you sat over another section, you'd get a double echo from the Sprint Vision versus the announcer, and you heard everything with a second or two later. Oh, was that ever disturbing?
Yeah, that's really strange.
Yeah, but some of those things I think are things that they'll get worked out. But I personally, that was my last visit to that speedway.
There you go. Oh, there's plenty of other ones to visit that you haven't gotten to. So
yeah, but it brings up a point is if people are sitting there with their 60-inch TVs, their hot wings in the oven, and their fridge full of beer, why are you going to go to a race?
Yep. And all that stuff only cost the family $30 to put together,
Mm-hmm.
Which is less than the price of a ticket.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, hell yeah. So.
Well, even your ticket, buddy, was, what did we pay Marine for that?
Know.
130 something?
Yeah, it was. Yep.
And that's Bristol.
And that's Bristol.
Imagine what, yeah.
And the traffic
Those spring
getting in there.
race, I imagine the tickets for the night race are more.
They are. They were
they?
170. Yep. Yeah, because I looked at both when I was scouting around and talking to Marine about it, and it's it's getting too elite, and my wages haven't gone up in 5 years, so.
And that you're gonna find the same complaint, here in the U.S. Newsflash, Kyle is not on the pole.
Why?
His car didn't pass inspection.
Oh, so Kurt Busch is back on the pole.
Correct.
Ooh.
Yep, so there's still a Busch on the pole. It's just Kurt. And so Kyle's at the end. The 18 did not pass post-inspection.
Really?
You know how I love my little penalties. Yep. Yeah, that just got tweeted. So
Ooh.
Wow.
doesn't
Well,
say what part of them didn't, what part of the car. But
For the members of the NASCAR 03 to current group listening, we will have to look at the giveaway program and see what we're going to do. That's going to mess that up. We had a giveaway program, the Tony Stewart clock that we gave away, and the guy who picked Kyle Busch already has been awarded that gift. So we'll have to figure that out.
That's awkward.
Yes.
you're going to do
Why?
take it back and then.
I'll have to get with Ryan and see what we're going to do about that later.
Oh, interesting. All right. Well,
Very.
I think we've probably babbled about Daytona enough. Let's talk Atlanta for a minute. There's some good news there. I mean, Fast Track, we're debuting the new rules package, which is really awesome, and I think everybody's quite excited. The drivers, this is a driver's track, one where they have control and can pass freely, as Martin Truex said.
Yeah. Martin's real happy with it.
Yeah.
And his car looks really good, so
I'm
you're
super
just what?
excited.
Oh, I am too. I've got my food and
Super
everything
excited
already.
about this because if you look at last year, really the most competitive, best races were Kentucky and Darlington, in my opinion, and that's when they used this aero package. It's just going to put it right back into the driver's hands. I think we're going to see racing like we did back in the 80s and 90s.
I'm really looking forward to watching it on TV.
Yeah, everybody is. I'm wondering about the tire package.
Yes, I put up a story about that just recently. Yep.
Yeah, that's the big if.
Yeah.
Tire drop off. I was watching, the one practice today, and I think tire drop off after 8 laps was pretty significant.
Which is good, though. That's good.
There.
It's hard for the crew chiefs, though. Because you have to it's almost like you need 3. You need a crew chief and 2 assistants up there. So they need somebody just to do tire wear on one calculator almost.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta say, you can tell that 4 tires on every stop are going to be absolutely necessary.
Yeah, it reminds me of the good old days at Darlington and Rockingham, the
Dover.
places that used to eat
Yes.
tire. Yeah, Dover. Yeah, it makes for good racing, in my opinion.
It does.
It does.
Absolutely. Yep. Strategy. And, when I saw that in the truck race about the caution clock, now this is something I just want to touch on because that was really intriguing. They never actually had to use the caution clock because the caution came out every single time. However, just before what would have been the caution clock caution. Now try and say that after a couple of these Busch Lights. Fortunately, I'm not into any wine yet. But 4 guys pitted. So, interesting.
And that caused an issue.
A huge wreck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it did cause a wreck, but it causes me to think, strategy. Yes, why wouldn't you pit beforehand? A caution's coming out. You go to the back of the field. Everybody else pits during the caution, and you're sitting there up front. Hello? I bet you NASCAR will be changing that rule pretty quick that they can't pit before or something. I'm not sure what they're going to do about that, but that's a real interesting thing.
I'm not sure it's going to come into play as much at other tracks. Maybe the super speedways, Daytona and Talladega, and the road courses, because you got to be really careful at like Atlanta, and especially a Bristol or a Martinsville, that you don't get lapped.
Yes.
Doing that,
Right.
So I'm not sure it's going to be as big of an issue as it was at Daytona this week, because Atlanta's only a mile and a half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to watch and see how that plays out.
I mean, there was lots of cautions in that race. Oh my God!
To propel.
Oh, and the truck race. The truck race was the best race of the weekend.
It was.
Yeah.
We really enjoyed that. It was good to see John Hunter doing well and Cameron Haley leading and all
Ryan
that.
Truex had
And-
a great race.
Yes, he did. He did until John Hunter, not until the last lap, or so there. That was a mess.
It was,
Since we're
but you know,
talking about-
interestingly, Ryan Truex, and I'm so happy to say this, is racing this weekend. And it looks to me like he is going to have sponsorship through most of the season. And he is just thrilled beyond words. He's one of those guys that would race for a cup of coffee. You know, just as long as somebody could put a truck together for him. He doesn't care about the payday. He just wants to race. And so he is beyond thrilled that he will be racing.
Since we're talking about the truck race, I want to give a shout out to my buddy Mike Beam, who's going to be on the show in the future. He's the team manager over there at GMS, and with Johnny Sauter winning the race, that was pretty cool.
That is cool. And
Yes, yep.
Absolutely. And speaking of shout-outs, we want to give a shout-out to Johnny Davis's 3 guys. I mean, you know, but all 3 of his drivers were doing okay.
Ryan Priest.
He was starting out very well, and then of course got tossed out of the race there with an accident. But the other guys did pretty good, and Eric McClure, he was up there all day, and the 01 of Ross Chastain was around, and I was really sad to see Mike Harmon's car and truck not make the race. I did go down and I gave him a big hug and stuff, and we talked about that for a little bit. But you know, being on those cars and trucks, that was pretty awesome.
Jeremy Clements carried the day.
Jeremy Clements with our personal names on. Well, your two's not mine, but
that was a lot of fun.
So cool.
You know, I stood in line with one of his crew members when we were getting the credentials, and we had a big, long talk. Once I told him that we were on the car, he kind of opened right up to me, and they only have 4 guys on their crew, 4 guys in a truck, and they all do everything. And I mentioned to him about our other interviews lately, you know, with Steve Meal and Derek Cope and Morgan Shepherd and all that, how they had all referred to Jeremy Clements, and he was kind of surprised by that. And I asked him, what do you think is the reason for that? He says, it's because we're just, you know, a small team, and we have good results because everybody on this team does every single job. We all do everything, and they work really good as a unit. And I stood in his garage stall for quite some time talking to the guys there, and you could see that they were like a well-oiled machine. There lots of communication between them. They obviously liked each other. The results showed it. He had a great run, and he's going to have another great run at Atlanta this weekend. You know, kudos to that team.
Absolutely. And I have to say, on top of that, one of the guys was mentioning that Jeremy Clements can put that engine together, take it apart, and put it back together himself, and does work in there with the team, and is part of the reason why that team is successful. You know, it's a special team. But, you know, we should mention, like Shannon said, we have talked to numerous drivers and numerous guys in the garage, and to a T, they have all mentioned Jeremy Clements.
Yep.
They have a lot of respect for that team and for his driving.
They do.
As do I.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we all do, and I gained a whole lot of respect for a lot of them. I mean, poor Johnny Davis, he was sicker than a dog, yet he still invited me into his hauler and offered me hot dog. I almost took him up on it, but he was eating chili cheese dogs, and that's not real good when you're standing around people. It was no wonder he was sick. But the poor guy, he was green around the gills the whole weekend long, and you know, and Mike Harmon, what an attitude, his spirit. Awesome. Even though he didn't make the race, he had a good spirit. And I said to him, your girlfriend, Darlene Thomas, I know she's disappointed. And he goes, oh, yeah, I think she's more upset than I am. And
yes, she was. Darlene was upset. I was too. I really thought that at least one of the vehicles was going to race. I really did.
Yeah, and Morgan did good.
Yeah, Morgan did great.
He blew an engine.
Yes, he blew an engine.
He had a great
quite
qualifying.
late in the race, though, you know?
Yeah. He was kind of racing all by himself most of the time, and he did some really strange things. He would come down pit road, stop in his stall during the race. Nobody would come out, and then he'd go again. Or he'd come down pit road just slowly, like he was serving a penalty, but he wasn't. And then off he'd go again. I think he was trying to diagnose and let them hear what was wrong with the car. And eventually,
Engine problem.
yeah, well, you could hear it go sour, and I think he must have had some electrical too. But you should have heard the fans cheering when he got into that Toyota truck and went along the front of the grandstands there. They stood up and cheered loud for him. It was amazing.
Yeah, he's a really beloved character. Unfortunately, there are a couple people in groups, in our groups, and they see him taking a spot as taking a spot up. Here's how I see it: the man puts that truck together, the man puts his cars together, he gets them out. If you can get your race car out there and it's in one piece, and it qualifies, you can race. He makes the same. He has to make the same qualifications everybody else does.
Yep. And he finished ahead of Ryan Preece.
He did.
I was a little concerned about Morgan. I'm not sure I saw his name on the speed charts for the Xfinity Series. I'm thinking maybe that blown engine may have set them back. Did you see if he's at Atlanta?
I will definitely look. You keep going, and I'll quickly let you know.
Yeah, he was good, and it was real disappointment to see Derek Cope, who had just got that new sponsor. I was doing a lot of tweeting, trying to help them on Twitter the day of the Xfinity race, and they were retweeting everything I was tweeting about the car. It was a beautiful looking car, and what a polite person, very well mannered and caring. Once I introduced myself to him, he says, yeah, okay, now I recognize the voice. And it was funny when I went over to Mike Harmon's truck in the morning. Tim Vaines was putting the decals on it, and he turned around and he goes, I recognize that voice. And then I saw that it was him, so I introduced myself, and he personally put our decal on Mike Harmon's truck, so that was kind of funny.
It was neat to see our emblems on that stuff.
It was.
I noticed on social media Mike's team really promoted it. They put up several pictures of it on the B post on the truck.
Yep. That was quite an honor. I just, we're just little, and they're just little, and we're just supporting each other, and we will continue to support those teams with Twitter and Facebook, and let you know how they're all doing and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Morgan is scheduled to go tomorrow.
Oh, good. So
Good.
Well,
they qualify tomorrow, so if he's not, we'll know pretty much right away.
Yeah.
But he is listed over at J-Ski.
Good. Well, I think we've got a pretty special guest tonight, so just hang tight and we'll bring him on. And we have a very special guest coming up. This man has had quite a life, everything from a bootlegger to a racetrack owner to an author. And now an evangelist. This man is cousin to Dale Sr., and I can hardly wait to hear the stories. Please welcome to the show, John Earnhardt.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, and thank you for coming on, Joe. With me, of course, is my co-host, Maureen Kelly from Pennsylvania.
Hi, John. It's great to have you on here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks to Buddy. Buddy's in our PR guy, Buddy Toole. He lives in Johnson City, Tennessee. So you got two countries here with you and a couple different states. So we're covering it all. And you're in North Carolina, correct?
That's correct. You're in the mountains, right close to the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Oh, nice. That sounds lovely. Yeah, you have quite a history here, and if you don't mind, I'd like to start at the beginning. Your family owned a racetrack called in Gold Hill, North Carolina, that focused on micro midget racing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, back in the 50s, I think it was around 1956, 57. My parents built a racetrack there in Gold Hill, North Carolina, and they raced micro-midget race cars. And what was interesting about the cars is that they were built, the motors came from Cushman motorcycles, and the frames came from the skin of hot water heaters. So whatever they could find to build these cars, they would build them. And what was unique about our racetrack is that we were open on Sunday afternoon when NASCAR and stock cars, they wouldn't race on Sundays. They were racing Friday night and Saturdays all day, and so we were the only track really open on Sunday afternoon. So we had people like the Myers brothers, Chocolate Myers, who was the gas man for Dale. His uncle and father would come to our track and race, and Ralph Earnhardt would come down and work on the cars and race. And so some of the big names that you have today actually started in these little micro-midget race cars. So our track was open from probably 1956 to about probably 1960, 61, and that's when NASCAR started racing on Sunday. So basically, we closed down when that happened.
We talked to Ned Jarrett at one time, John, and he mentioned going over to a small short track on Sundays and actually having to sneak over to do that because his father didn't want him racing at all. And I know Ralph raced there, right? Now, he would be was he a great uncle?
No, what we have is that it's kind of interesting, and it only happens in North Carolina. Dale and I had the same great grandfather, but a different grandmother.
Oh.
Our grandfather had 3 wives, and I come from one of those wives, and Dale came from the other. And you got to catch this now. On my mother's side, we come from the 3rd grandmother.
Oh, but you're
like I say, only in North Carolina.
That's kind of unusual for back in that day. That
right.
that you have 3 wives like that. That's most unusual. And you look remarkably like Dale Sr. Which is interesting. I saw a picture of you in a Good Wrench shirt and some sunglasses. It'd be hard pressed to tell the difference.
Well, that's what a lot of people tell us, and the similarities. Dale and I, were about the same age. He was born in April of 1951. I was born in March of 1950, and we both come from racing families. And he quit school in the 9th grade, and I was 1 year older, and I quit, or actually I got kicked out of school in the 10th grade. And so he went into racing, and I had my hot rods and so forth, but it's kind of interesting. We worked at the same mill. He worked first shift at a little place called Cannon Mills, and that's in Kannapolis, North Carolina, and I worked second shift there. We both got married the same year in 1968. He started his racing career. A lot of people don't realize this, but he started in a Ford Falcon, and that was 1970, 71, and I was driving a Ford Falcon at the same time. And so it's interesting that Dale was called the Intimidator, and I got the name Evangelator.
Yeah, and we will ask you a little bit about that in a bit here, but you guys were also bootleggers, correct? Like a lot of former racers?
Well, my parents were bootleggers. I was born in the back of a tavern. A good Christian doctor and his wife came and brought me into the world, and she actually prayed over me in the back of that tavern. And now I think it was Dale's grandparents that were bootleggers at the time and so forth. But because Dale comes from a good family, Ralph and Martha. Martha's still living today, just a sweet Christian lady that really loves the Lord, and so a good family there.
That's good. You must have some great stories growing up with him. I mean, he's a legend. There's no.
That's right. That's right.
No getting around that. And why don't you tell us a couple for our listeners? I mean, I know they've been eagerly anticipating this interview.
Well, I've known some stories that took place in his life, such as Dale going by a church one time and he noticed that the parking lot was in shambles, and so he decided he would pull in there and went to the office. The pastor was in there, and he asked the pastor why the parking lot was in such a mess, and the pastor told him, said, well, we just don't have funds to repair it. So Dale told the pastor, he said, hey, you get it repaired, send me the bill, and I'll take care of it. And, he did things like that you don't, hear a lot of stories about. And I know at Daytona and other racetracks he would go to, he when he got a chance, he'd go over to the hospital and sit down with little children, and especially in the like a cancer ward or something, and talk to the children and spend a few minutes with them, and I, at his autographing sessions, I remember being beside him at several places when he autographed, and somebody come up in a wheelchair, and he didn't have to do this, but he would reach in his wallet and hand them $100 bill, and just to try to help them out a little bit. Those are some of the things that you don't hear about. They don't write about too often, But he was a good man, had a good heart, and probably, I'm looking back to about probably 1969, 1970, Dale was really getting into racing, and it was right around that same time that I became a Christian and decided that my racing part would end there, but I would start racing for the Lord. So I started working with NASCAR and others instead of racing, mainly doing chaplaincy work and having services for people and so forth at the different racetracks.
Well, NASCAR fans and drivers alike are all quite religious. So that was a sort of a natural progression. You guys, though, when you were young bucks in the early teens, must have been up to some pranks, though, before all that got going.
Well, now there's a lot of stories written about Dale doing some crazy things at night, like going by the judge's house and blowing his horn at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and waking him up, and then driving on in his Ford Falcon. And so now, and Dale, like I say, it was kind of interesting that the Earnhardts, Ralph and those guys, they raced. They were driving Fords back in the 50s. And whenever I got 16, I told my dad I wanted to go to a car lot to get me a used car. So we went to the car lot. When we got out of the car to look at them, he headed toward the Fords, and I saw a 55 Chevrolet sitting over in the corner. And I said, Dad, I'm going to go get that 55 Chevrolet. He said, you can't do that. Earnhardt's drive Fords. And I said, well, no. I said, I want that 55. And I'm not going to say I'm the one that got them started in Chevrolets, but it wasn't too long after that they started driving Chevrolets.
Well, then you would actually claim that.
There you go.
Yeah. So, but a lot of people don't realize they started in Fords and then went from Fords to driving Chevrolets. And Dale Sr., of course, and then Dale Jr. now drives a Chevrolet. So yeah, they've got all kinds of stories written about Dale Sr. Not a whole lot about Ralph. We know that he was a great racer, but beyond that, we don't have a whole lot that's written about him.
Yeah, Martha doesn't. She doesn't tell a lot of those stories. I often wonder, if Kelly or somebody else is like the keeper of the family stories, that one day, the family would release the stories about Martha.
Right. Oh, and I want to tell you, I talk to her every so often, and she is just one of the sweetest ladies that you ever meet, and still lives in the same home in Kannapolis, North Carolina, same home that she raised Dale Sr. in, and the rest of the family. And this is a story, I don't know how many people know about it, but Dale offered her many times to move up to Mooresville, and he said he would build her a nice home up there in Mooresville, and she said, no, I'm going to stay in the same home that I raised you children in, and that's where she is today, still living right there in Kannapolis, North Carolina, in the same home.
Yeah, she still cooks meals for the family. I know, every once in a while, Dale or his fiance Amy will tweet out that they were at Martha's and, had Sunday lunch over there, right. Or, could be a Saturday, but, apparently she still loves to do all that for the family.
Oh, yes. I was over at Kannapolis, a few months ago. And what I do here in the mountains of North Carolina near Asheville, I take groups of people, businessmen, businesswomen, whoever want to go, and I take them down to Kannapolis, to Mooresville. We do a tour of Joe Gibbs, and also Junior Enterprise. We take them by and show them the statue. So here a few months ago, I took a group down there, and we get out of our van to show them the statue of Dale there in Kannapolis, and there was Martha standing there cleaning the statue, which I thought was so neat. So I introduced her to all the people with me, and they all wanted to get a picture with her. So that was kind of nice. She's just a sweet, sweet lady.
She sure comes across that way. And the few times that I think Steve Burns did a really good interview with her just before he passed. Rest in peace, Steve. I miss you. With her, that was just charming as all get out.
Right, yeah. It's nice. You know, she's on Facebook, and it's just nice to communicate with her that way, and to see what the family's doing. And, you know, Kelly's got that special program that she does that a lot of people go on, and that's really good, too. And Kelly tells a lot about the family, and it's kind of neat. When Dale was living and he would be autographing in certain places, I'd try to work it out so I could be there with him if I was in the area. And Kelly was always with Dale Sr., her dad. She just would go and stand beside him, help him out, you know, and while he was doing autographing. And one little experience I had back, of course, it was when Dale was living. He was autographing with Rusty Wallace at the Greenville, they call it the Greenville Pickens racetrack in Greenville, South Carolina. And so I went over, and I was standing there close by while he was autographing, and after 2 hours, they had to leave, and so they had to get up, and here was a whole line of people who had not gotten Dale's autograph yet. But Dale had to go because they had another appointment, so he and Rusty, and they got in the car and went to their helicopter, and they flew off. Well, all these people were just so upset because they didn't get an autograph, so I took some a marker, a Sharpie, and I started walking through the crowd, and I said, well, Dale's gone, but I'm an Earnhardt. I'm willing to autograph it. I must have autographed 200 or 300 things. So they still got the name Earnhardt, even though it wasn't Dale Sr.
Well, I think the Earnhardt name in racing is like, number one. I mean, it doesn't really... everybody knows it. Everybody loves it. It's right. Treasured by everybody. And because you look so much like him, do you ever get mistaken for him back in the day?
Yeah, back then I did. Not so much now because I got my gray hair and my gray mustache.
Well, plus he's gone, right? So if
well, the thing is, a lot of people didn't realize that Dale used to paint his so he'd look younger.
Of course. Well, we know that with DW right in the booth. I mean, he's a big hair club for men kind of guy, right?
Right. And so anyway, there was a time I was at Myrtle Beach, and I was in line I think it was a cafeteria, and I was in line to get my order my food, and somebody turned around. It was in front of me. They said, "Dale Earnhardt's here," as loud as they could say it. And people started coming over, and I said, "No, you got the wrong guy." So
that must happen. That probably happens more than you're willing to tell us, I bet.
Well, that's true. It did a lot back then. So I tell people, I say, now I'm what Dale would probably have looked like if he had lived. You know, you look at the guy with gray hair and a gray mustache. You know, so. But anyway, his family.
Yes.
You are. You're very handsome, I will say. And anybody who hasn't looked at Sean's picture, you just go right on there and take a look at it. Dale Sr. was a handsome guy, and he took really good care of himself. You know, I love the stories, the few stories that Kelly has told about coming upon her father on a Monday after he'd have this really long race weekend, and he would be over there and not picking crops, but certainly working on his farm.
Oh yeah. He loved to work with the chickens. You know, he had I guess they sold. I believe it was Purdue that they sold to, and he loved his chickens, his cows, getting out there and working in the field. Boy, that was his love. You know, to just go out and work in the fields on the tractor, and that was some of the things that he really loved. Now, I don't know if you had a chance to read our book. There's 2 books out and it's about my life and Dale growing up together. One's called Race to Victory Lane, and the other is called Victory Lane by Dale Earnhardt. My wife's the one that wrote those two.
I ordered the Victory one today.
Oh, okay. Well, the one book has pictures in the back of it of Dale growing up and Junior and Martha. So it's got a lot of the family in the back there. But anyway, the reason I'm bringing this up is there's some neat stories in there about bootlegging. And as you know, racing basically started from bootleggers being chased by the police, and they tried to get their cars faster and faster as the police would increase their horsepower. So bootleggers did the same. And my sister and I were the decoys for my parents. We had an old Ford station wagon, and they'd place all the seats down, and they'd fill it up with beer and liquor and moonshine, and they would cover it with blankets, and then my sister and I would lie down on top of it. And if the police would ever stop them, they'd shine their light, because they'd always haul this stuff in the middle of the night. If they would shine their lights in there on us, my mother would say, now the children are back there sleeping, we're traveling, so please don't wake them up. So I don't know how many times my mother and dad got away with it, because they had us on top there as the decoys.
Yeah, no, but those were crazy times, weren't they?
But it's all part of NASCAR's history. I mean, Junior Johnson, I got to spend some time with him, and he told me a lot about that. And I mean, and so did Ned Jarrett, though they weren't in a bootleg and they were had a sawmill. But you know, those kind of stories are fascinating. And I don't think you know where you're going unless you know where you've been. Oh, there you go. That's true. That's true. And it's interesting. You know, I think of Junior Johnson. He was a little north from where we lived. We were down in the central part of North Carolina, and he was kind of up in North Wilkesboro, in the kind of toward the mountains. But it's interesting. I saw him a few months ago when he was at Bristol. I guess it was last year at Bristol, and he's got a little stand that where they sell little jars of moonshine. And I thought, now this is interesting. Back in the 50s or 60s, he spent time in prison for selling moonshine, and now he has a permit to sell it. Yeah. Actually, I think his jail time was for tax evasion, for not paying the taxes on that moonshine. That's right. That's probably the reason. And it's interesting. My parents. It's interesting how people work together. And we had a big basement in our house, and they would keep in that basement more beer and liquor and moonshine than they're supposed to, even back then when they had a tavern. And whenever an inspector was to come and do the inspection, they would get a call and my parents would be told, hey, the inspector's coming in a couple of days, you better clean the basement out. So here were officials that were actually helping them, and so they'd clean the basement out, and the inspectors would come, look around, and they would find nothing there that wasn't supposed to be there. So it's interesting how that works.
It's such a remarkable time in U.S. history, you know, but it's so much a part of the South.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
It's a wonderful history, you know, and it's like Shannon said, it really is. It's very much a part of the history of NASCAR, you know. What you ought to do, John, is collect a lot more of this stuff and, you know, write that history of NASCAR in there too. Oh, I know, because I'll tell you, all that history, just like the little race cars that my parents raced and the racetrack, we had micro midgets. I've noticed that on these TV shows, when they're giving the history of NASCAR, for some reason they leave out these little micro midget race cars, and it's kind of like they skip them. And that was really a part, especially right during 1954 through 61. It was a big part because that's where the guys would go and race. Marty Robbins, he used to race those out in California back in the day. And Jeff Gordon started in micro midgets. Bobby Labonte started in micro midgets. That's right.
And so this was a big thing. And when you go way back to the 60s and early 70s, And way back in the 50s, they were racing these. See, I thought it was just in North Carolina from North Carolina to Florida, but I found out as I've studied the history of the micro midget race cars, they actually raced all over the United States. Marty Robbins was out in California racing those cars.
And Canada. My father built us one when I was a kid. And I'll tell you something. We raced that little thing all over the place, and we raced it on ice even, and it was now let me tell you, as a Canadian, that's a sort of a either a hockey player or you're an ice racer, and that's how I learned how to drive, was racing the little micro midget my dad built us on the ice.
That is so neat. Well, I have two of them. I've restored two of them. One is fiberglass, and the other one was mine when I was a kid racing. Back in the 50s, 60s, at our racetrack, and just about every racetrack, when they raced micro midgets, they had three type of races. They let the children race in their race car, then the women would race, and then the men would race. And my mother was a lot better driver than my dad. She'd just run over anybody.
Yeah, I was too. They eventually let me race with the boys.
All right, well, that's good. Well, they wouldn't let my mother race with the guys because they were afraid of her. So
yeah, that's funny. That's hilarious. What turned you from that racing side into the evangelist side? Like what was it there that was a trigger for you?
Well, what happened was I got married. Dale got married the same year that I got married, and my marriage, just like his first two marriages, were on the rocks, having a lot of problems. And my wife and I just couldn't really get along. And I came home one night after being out with my buddies partying, and she said, "I want to share something with you from the Bible." And I thought, "Oh no, I don't want to hear this stuff, you know." And she shared with me about how important we are and how God paid the price by allowing Jesus to die, and it just touched me that night, because I was one of those brought up in the back of a tavern and living in a tavern and the language and everything that goes with it. But when I heard that, something so real, that Jesus loved me so much that he wanted to save me, that night I gave my life to the Lord, and from that point on I started traveling and preaching and sharing. And so anyway, that's how it happened. It was right around 1970.
Well, sometimes things happen in life that are just meant to be, and that was obvious for you. You know, that must have helped you a lot when Dale Sr. passed away. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that, or is that too painful?
No, well, it was at the time, and it still is, but what happened was my wife and I were in a little place called High Point, North Carolina, and I was doing a seminar. And right before the seminar, I was watching that race, and of course, when Dale had that wreck, I was watching it. We finished the race, watching it on TV. We headed on to our seminar, and I got up. It was about 6:30. I was about to get up to speak, and someone brought me in a note where they had gotten a message. Somebody called from Daytona to tell me that he had died, and so I made that announcement in that seminar, and people that didn't even know Dale started crying. You know, it was really, I feel like one of my most powerful messages that night, to be able to share that there is hope, you know, beyond the grave and so forth. But that was tough. That was tough because most people that watched that race thought, well, that wasn't such a bad wreck, because people had worse wrecks, you know, and walked away from it. But that one, of course, that was. I look back and I try to think, well, you know, what was going on at that time? And here's Dale in third place, and Michael Waltrip in second, or in first, and Junior in second. And it looked like when I watched it that he was trying to block somewhat, so that his son and Michael was driving his car, Dale Sr.'s car. So, you know, what a tragedy, but at the same time, Dale did exactly what he liked to do, and that was race.
Yeah, and I think the whole world thought that too. It didn't look that bad, and you know, the racing world kind of sort of crashed. Like you said, people that didn't even know him were crying because he was such an icon of the sport and such a and still is to this day. I mean, I just came back from Daytona. I'm sorry I didn't make your thing you had going there. I had a prior commitment. I saw somebody sent it to me that you were speaking there, and I meant to go to it, but I couldn't. But it's still to this day, they're still celebrating him.
Oh, yes. Every race I go to, and I'm sorry I can't be at Atlanta this weekend, but I was down at Daytona, and I spent a lot of time there, in the medical clinic that's in the infield there for the drivers or for the fans if somebody gets hurt or something.
Mm-hmm.
I spent some time there each day, and, actually Dale Jr. came in there while, from his accident. So, and it's kind of interesting that the hospital is called, I think it's called Florida Hospital, is the one that's in charge of the races now, and a nice group of people. I went over and had prayer with them each morning, and that I was there from Thursday through Sunday, and just a nice group of people that's doing the medical work there. And so, I love racing. Everywhere I go, people ask me about Dale. It's kind of crazy and amazing at the same time. I meet people from overseas, and they tell me, "Oh, I know how Dale was my favorite driver." And one little neat story. I think this is so unique. My wife and I went to the Philippines back in the early '90s, and we did some missionary work over there. And one day on a Sunday afternoon. It may have been another day because the time would be different in the Philippines. But anyway, I walked in this bamboo hut with a dirt floor, and over in the corner was a colored television, and the race was on. and I introduced myself to the people in this little bamboo hut, and they said, "Oh yes, race car driver, race car."
we know he has fans in other parts of the world because we have fans just of this show.
Oh, God. Everywhere.
Who live in other countries. And I think part of that had to do with Dale, the popularity of even just one person like that, can really spread the sport around. Right.
Well, there's been a lot of great drivers. I think back in the 50s and 60s, some of those great guys like Fireball Roberts and the Petty family, and boy, there's just been a lot of great drivers, but none like Dale Sr. He was one of the tops because the way he drove, and he kind of learned like I did, on the back streets of North Carolina here, and learned to drive before we were even 12 years old, out there driving old cars that we put together, and I actually kind of got the spirit from him to build a trike. I built myself a 14-foot trike with a Chevy engine on it.
Oh my!
S10 rear end. It's got a little bit of everything on it, but and I'm getting ready to fix it so it'll shoot fire out of the mufflers. And
once a motorhead, always a motorhead.
There you go. And back then in the 50s, 60s, when kids would build little stuff, take lawnmower motors off and build a little go-kart, and that still sticks with me today, wanting to find pieces and parts here and there and just build something,
Oh, and there's a show called what is it? American Pickers, where do you watch that?
I do. I love it.
Yeah, and they go out and they find stuff like that, and it's so cool. I mean, I've seen several shows with them. They went to Cale Yarborough's house. It was just great, and people like that can bring those parts to life for people like you and millions like you around the country that raced way back when they were kids and did that stuff. And it's so great that part of history is being preserved.
Oh, I know. I love that. That's yeah, and I think it's so important. There's a place in Mooresville, North Carolina, called Memory Lane Museum, and I know the guys that work there. Alex Bean, he's the one that owns it, but he has cars in there that were raced back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and it's just a neat place to go. It just brings back old memories, for the cars for back in those days that they raced, and he's even got an old moonshine steel in there showing how they built them and so forth. So it's a history that you go back and it takes you back and you start dreaming again of the old days.
Yeah. And you think you're 12 or 20 again, right? Takes you back.
Oh yeah. Hey, now wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, with the knowledge we have now.
Right.
I was thinking to myself when you were talking about the history, Dale Jr. is very much a collector of the stories of NASCAR and the stories of the different, the NASCAR greats, and even, some of the people that you don't even think of. I have a tremendous respect for him that way, and I hope when he retires, perhaps, he'll just go on, and maybe do a show once in a while and collect this history, because we don't want to lose it. We've had our best show was Ned Jarrett. Hands down flat, and he told us so many wonderful stories.
He did.
And
you have stories.
Yes.
Well, I recommend. Hey, we got so many stories in the book. The one Race to Victory Lane or Victory Lane by Crystal Earnhardt. And I think people can still order the book through some of the stores and bookstores.
Yeah, Amazon.com's got it.
Amazon.com, that's where I ordered.
Okay, and some of those are too expensive, though. I don't know why. But I did see one of our books on there for 1 penny. Now, how do you buy a book for 1 penny? Do you just...
Oh, my.
Be careful. We've got a lot of stories in there, and my wife is working on another little book that we can give out at NASCAR. So we don't sell any of our books at NASCAR. We give them away free, and I take pictures, and my wife takes pictures of drivers, and then we get them to autograph them, and we give those away free. We never charge for any of our materials. And that's kind of our ministry, to keep before the people, racing. We go to different seminars. I have car shows. We give away pictures of Dale Sr., Dale Jr. that they had autographed for me. And one of the neat things we do at every racetrack now is we have what we call marriage renewal, of the couples renewing their marriage vows.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's becoming very
neat.
Successful. In Daytona, we always do one in front of Dale Sr.'s statue there.
Oh, I wish I would have known that. I would have got you to remarry me.
Oh, okay. Well, we did that. We did that at, just last week down there at Daytona, and I'm going to be going to Bristol here in April, and we're
There you
going to
go,
do
buddy.
Yeah, there we go, at Bristol, and we usually do it over by the drag strip. We have a special service by the drag strip there during that race week at Bristol. So,
and you work. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I'll put a flyer on my Facebook, so people, if people want to come on and they can look at it and get the times. We usually do two different marriage renewals. One like on a Friday, and one like on Saturday afternoon. If the race is Saturday night, if the race is Sunday, we sometimes do one on Sunday morning then.
Huh. Geez, I wish I would have known that. I would have loved to renew my vows to a very special man at Daytona. That would have been a classic.
Well, one of the classics happened last year, right there in front of Dale Sr.'s statue. We had the marriage renewal, and this couple came up to us. We had several couples, and they just looked so young. And so I asked them, I said, now, how long have y'all been married? And they said, well, we got married 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
And here they were renewing their vows, which I guess is okay.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
Maybe they weren't married. Maybe they were married by a justice of the peace, and
yeah,
and they wanted a.
That's very possible, because this year, just last week, we had one on the infield marriage renewal, and we had a young couple that came to us, and that's what happened to them. They got married by justice of the peace, I guess a year or so ago, and they said it just didn't feel right. They wanted to get married by a minister, and they said, here we are at Daytona, no better place to renew our vows and to kind of have a little wedding. And so we decorated a little bit and gave them a rose, and it was just really pretty, really neat.
But I think Buddy wanted to ask you something there, Buddy.
Okay.
Buddy?
Sorry, guys. My mute button malfunctioned.
Oh, yeah. Happens to me all the time, buddy.
I was going to tell you, John, if you'll send me that flyer, I'll be glad to spread it around to our groups, and I'm sure a lot of folks will be interested in that. I hope to see you up at Bristol. I'll be there, and I'll give you a call when I'm there, and maybe we can meet up somewhere.
Hey, that'll be great. I always go, on the one in the spring at Bristol, which is coming up in April. They set the tables up there in the Food City hospitality area. And I always have a table there with the drivers, and we do autographing, and we give away our books and things. Now, the one in August at Bristol, they closed the street down there in Bristol downtown, and we always have a table set up right there by the stage where the drivers come up and they introduce the drivers and introduce different ones that deals with NASCAR. So that's where our table's always been for the last 10 years or more. We've been right there by the stage. So hopefully I get to see you this time at Bristol.
Oh, yeah, I'll definitely come over and say hi.
Oh, absolutely.
That'll be great.
What's the name of your ministry?
It is called Victory Lane. The same title as our book.
Good. So for everybody that goes camping in the infield, now you do a Sunday service, correct?
That's correct, yep. We actually, if the race is on Sunday, we do one Saturday morning and we do one Sunday morning. Now, when the race is on Saturday night, like the August race is at Bristol, we just do a service on Saturday morning before that race that night.
Oh, well, that's awesome. And, we really want to thank you for coming on. You've told some great stories. And if you don't mind hanging around for a second after we hang up here, I know Buddy wants to talk to you for a minute. But we your stories have been fabulous. You offer so much insight into the past, and you're still so current with the present, helping people through religion and what have you at the tracks. Lots of the NASCAR fans are very religious, and that is so appreciated by all of them. I know it is.
Well, I tell you what, I love NASCAR. I love racing. It's it's one of those things it's in your blood, and so
it is.
I plan to do it as long as I possibly can to work and help people any way I can. And thank you so much for having me on.
And thank you.
Have a great evening now.
We hope you've enjoyed hanging out in the Happy Hour Garage. Thanks for tuning in. Please join Shannon and Maureen next week for another episode of NASCAR news, interviews, and stories. Check out our website at www.happyhourgarage.com for our previous shows and see what's coming up next.